2:47 a.m. Sarah Martinez pressed the wrong elevator button. B2, basement level. When the doors opened, she saw a dark corridor. She shouldn't have had access here, but her security card worked. 5 minutes, then I'm out, she thought. At the end, she found a locked door. Medical equipment sounds came from inside. She opened the door. 12 beds, 12 patients, all in vegetative states, all connected to tubes, all hooked to monitors, and Sarah recognized one of them, Mr. Henderson, 72 years old. 3 months ago, they said he died from a brain hemorrhage. His family had held a funeral. Sarah attended. The casket was closed. They chose cremation. But now, Mr. Henderson was here, breathing, something flowing through his IV line, his vitals displayed on the monitor, heart rate 64, blood pressure 110/70. He was alive, but in the records, he was dead. Sarah tried to leave, but Dr. Victor Ashford stood in the doorway, the assistant chief of medicine. "How did you get in here?" he asked. Sarah's heart raced. I was just..." Ashford stepped closer. "You have a choice now, Sarah. Either you forget what you saw, or you might have an accident yourself." Sarah ran that night, but she knew what she'd seen was a crime, and if she spoke up, her life would be in danger. But if she stayed silent, 240 patients for 8 years in the basement would continue being used for illegal drug trials while their families mourned. And the most terrifying part, the drugs from these experiments were already on the market, FDA approved. Millions of people were using them because the tests were hidden, but the results were real. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story impacts you, please consider subscribing to discover more unsolved cases. Chicago, Illinois, 2024. St. Michael's Hospital was one of the city's most respected medical centers. 400-bed capacity, 1,200 staff members, 50,000 plus patients annually. Its oncology, cardiology, and neurology departments were recognized nationwide. People came here to heal. They trusted, but nobody knew. Some patients never left. Officially, they died, but in reality, they went to the basement. Sarah Martinez was 28 years old. She'd worked as a nurse at St. Michael's for 5 years. Night shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., quiet hours, few patients, most slept. Sarah kept records, did rounds, waited for morning, routine, safe, boring, until that night when she pressed the wrong elevator button. B2 level. Normally only maintenance staff went there. Old equipment storage, broken beds, unused devices. But Sarah's security card opened the door. Strange, she thought. Nurses shouldn't have B2 access, but maybe a system error, maybe temporary clearance. She didn't think much of it, just curiosity. The corridor was dark. Dim emergency lights glowed. Sarah walked. Each step echoed. Silence. Finally she found a door. Research room. Unauthorized entry prohibited. It read. A low hum came from inside. Medical equipment, ventilators, monitors. Sarah paused. She should turn back, but curiosity was irresistible. She opened the door, 1 inch, then fully, and she saw 12 beds, sterile white sheets, a patient in each one, vegetative state, connected to tubes, IV lines, breathing machines, EKG monitors, professional setup. But why here? Why in the basement? Why hidden? Sarah entered. She approached the first bed, an elderly woman, in her 60s, eyes closed, breathing, monitor showing vitals, stable, but unconscious. Sarah looked at the second bed, a middle-aged man. His face seemed familiar, but she couldn't remember who. Third bed, fourth, fifth, and at the sixth bed, she froze. Mr. Henderson, Robert Henderson, 72 years old. Sarah knew him. 3 months ago, he'd been treated at St. Michael's. Heart problems. Sarah had been his nurse. He stayed 2 weeks. Then he had a brain hemorrhage. Sudden, unexpected. Doctors said nothing can be done. The family wanted to disconnect life support. And 2 days later, he was pronounced dead. Sarah attended the funeral. She offered condolences to his family. The casket was closed. "We chose cremation," they said, and Sarah believed them. But now Mr. Henderson was here, alive, in a vegetative state, but alive. Sarah approached. She held his hand. It was warm, pulse present, breathing, monitor working, heart rate 64, blood pressure 1110 slough, oxygen saturation 98%, stable, a living person, but in the records, a dead person. Sarah looked at the IV line, a drug infusion, label NS447, Phase 2 trial, subject 18. Sarah froze. Subject? Trial? What did this mean? How did you get in here? The voice came from behind. Sarah turned. Dr. Victor Ashford, 45 years old, Assistant Chief of Medicine, Research Director, respected, professional, but now, cold. I accidentally, in the elevator, Sarah stammered. Ashford approached. He closed the door. This floor is restricted. How did you enter? Sarah showed her security card. It worked. I didn't know. Ashford took the card, examined it. System error, he said. You shouldn't have had access. Then he looked at Sarah. Long, evaluating. You won't tell anyone what you saw. Sarah's heart pounded. But Mr. Henderson, he died. I went to his funeral. But he's here, alive. And you're injecting him with something. What is this? Ashford remained silent, then said, clinical research, legal, approved. Sarah looked around. 12 vegetative patients, secret basement room, unauthorized entry warning. This doesn't look legal, she said. Ashford's face hardened. Sarah, you're a good nurse. You've worked here 5 years. Perfect record. On track for promotion. But now you've come to the wrong place at the wrong time. You have 2 options. Forget what you saw and continue your work. Or ask questions and your career ends. Maybe worse. Sarah swallowed. Are you threatening me? Ashford smiled. But it wasn't warm. No, I'm telling you the truth. This hospital is conducting very important research. We're developing life-saving drugs. You can't jeopardize that. Do you understand? Sarah stepped back. I just want to leave. Ashford cleared the way. Go, and forget. Otherwise you'll regret it. Sarah left. Ran. Got in the elevator. Went to the 3rd floor. Finished her shift. Went home. But she couldn't forget Mr. Henderson's face. The vitals on the monitor. The label on the IV line. Subject at 18. She couldn't sleep that night. By morning she'd made a decision. She would speak up. But to whom? Hospital administration? Ashford was assistant chief. Maybe the chief was involved too. Police? She had no proof. Just her testimony. Would they believe her? Uncertain. Then she remembered a name. David Harrington. Private investigator. He investigated unsolved cases. Maybe he would help. Sarah called David. On the phone she told him everything. The wrong elevator. The basement. 12 patients. Mr. Henderson. The threat. David listened. Quietly. Then asked, do you have proof? Photos? Video? Sarah shook her head, though on the phone. No. I was in shock. I just ran. David thought, we need to get back into the hospital. I need to see that room. But there's risk. If we're caught, Sarah interrupted. I know, but those people, their families think they're dead. They're grieving. But in reality, they're being used as test subjects. I have to stop this. David replied, okay, but we must be careful. I'll call Marcus Chen too, criminal psychologist. He understands these types of ethical violations. And Elena Cortez, journalist. If we find evidence, we'll need to expose this publicly. 2 days later, David, Marcus and Elena met with Sarah at a cafe, far away from the hospital. Sarah told everything again, in detail. Marcus took notes, then analyzed. This is a classic end justifies means situation. If they're really conducting illegal drug trials, they probably think these patients are already vegetative. They have no life, but our tests could save millions of lives in the future. Therefore it's ethical. But of course, it's not ethical, because there's no consent. Families don't know. And fake death certificates. That's direct crime. Elena asked, so where are these drugs going? Are they just testing or selling them? Sarah answered, I don't know, but the label said Phase 2 trial. That's part of the FDA approval process. So maybe these tests are for getting the drug to market. David looked at Elena. Research St. Michael's Hospital's research division. What drugs did they develop in the last 8 years? Which ones got FDA approval? Which are on the market? Elena agreed. She researched for 3 days, and what she found was shocking. In the last 8 years, St. Michael's Hospital contributed to the development of 5 different drugs. 3 of them received FDA approval and were currently on the market. 1, NeuroRevive, Alzheimer's drug, released 2 years ago, 50,000 plus patients using it. 2. Cardiostable, heart failure medication, approved 18 months ago, 30,000 plus patients using it. 3. Immunoboost, cancer immunotherapy drug, released 1 year ago, 12,000 plus patients using it. Total, 92,000 plus patients were using these drugs, and if what Sarah saw was real, the tests for these drugs might have been conducted illegally. Elena researched the drug's clinical trials. She examined reports submitted to the FDA, public records. Phase 1 trials, open, transparent, with volunteers. Phase 2 trials, there was a gap here. Reports existed, but details were missing. Hospital setting, IRB approved, patient consent obtained, it said. But no names, no details, just numbers. 240 subjects, 18-month duration, successful results. David asked Marcus, 240 subjects. Sarah saw 12 patients. That means there are more, or there were. Marcus replied, if they used 240 subjects over 8 years, and all were in vegetative states, then some must have died. Really this time, during testing. And what did they tell the families? Died of natural causes. David nodded. We need to prove this. We have to get back into the hospital. But this time, with a camera, we need to gather evidence. Sarah hesitated. If we're caught, I don't know what Ashford will do. David replied, that's why we'll be careful. You'll go in, as a nurse on your regular shift. At night, during quiet hours, you'll go down to B2. You'll carry a small camera, button camera. Just record the room, the patients, IV labels, monitors, 5 minutes, then leave. Elena and I will wait outside. If there's a problem, we'll get you out. Sarah took a deep breath. Okay, let's do it. That night, Sarah came to her shift. Normal. She smiled, greeted colleagues, started work. When it was 2:30 a.m., she got in the elevator, pressed B2. This time the security card still worked. Ashford hadn't disabled it. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he thought Sarah would forget. The door opened. Dark corridor. Sarah walked. Her heart raced. Her hands trembled. But she continued. She reached the research room, opened the door. 12 beds. But this time, it was different. Only 8 patients. 4 beds were empty. Where did they go? Sarah thought. Then she understood. They died. During testing. And new subjects hadn't arrived yet. Sarah activated the button camera. She recorded each bed, patients, monitors, IV labels. On one, CR891, Phase 2, Subject 34. On another, IB220, Phase 2, Subject 34. On another, IB220, Phase 2, Subject 41. Each a different drug, each a different subject number. Sarah approached the desk. Files were there, paper forms, digital tablet. On the tablet screen, a list. Active subjects, 8. Completed subjects, 232. Ongoing drug trials, 3. Sarah recorded this too. Then she heard footsteps from the corridor. Approaching. Panic. Sarah looked around. No hiding place. Only under beds. Quickly, she slipped under bed too. Waited. The door opened. 2 people entered. Sarah saw their legs. White coats. Doctors. They were talking. Subject 34 is showing adverse reaction. Liver function declining. Reduced dosage. We still have 6 weeks. We need to complete the data. What if he dies? Then we apply protocol. Tell the family complications. Arrange funeral. Find new subject. Sarah held her breath. The conversation continued. Ashford said a new nurse got into B2. Did he threaten her? Yes, but I'm not sure she'll stay quiet. We should monitor her. If she causes problems, silence. Then accidents happen. They always do in hospitals. Sarah's blood ran cold. 10 minutes later, the doctors left. Sarah waited. 5 more minutes, then crawled out from under the bed. Quickly left the room, ran down the corridor, got in the elevator, went to the 3rd floor, entered the bathroom, vomited. Her hands were shaking, but she checked the camera. The recording was there. Everything. Patients, labels, files, conversation, evidence. When the shift ended, Sarah left the hospital. David and Elena waited in the car. She handed over the camera. I got it, she said. Everything's there. And I heard, they're planning to kill me if I talk. David looked serious. Then we need to move fast. We'll take this evidence to the police. But first, we need to do one more thing. Elena analyzed the camera footage, read the IV labels. She researched the CR891 code, found it. Cardiostable's research code. So this drug, was currently on the market, 30,000 patients using it, but phase 2 testing was done with these illegal subjects. She researched IB220 code, immunoboost, 12,000 patients using it. Again, phase 2 testing here. Elena dug deeper. She tried to find out who the 2040 subjects in the FDA reports were, but no names, only numbers, anonymous, because families didn't know, no official consent, just fake death certificates. David went to the police, showed the evidence, camera footage, Elena's research. The police chief listened, then said, "This is serious, but the hospital is powerful. They have good lawyers. Before we raid, we need more evidence. Can you access death certificates, vegetative state patients from St. Michael's, over the last 8 years?" David worked with Elena. They collected death certificates from public records. In the last 8 years, 240 vegetative state patients from St. Michael's Hospital were recorded as deceased. All chose cremation, all signed by the same doctor, Dr. Victor Ashford. 240 death certificates, 240 fake deaths, 240 illegal subjects. With this evidence, police took action. They involved the FBI. Federal crime drug trials are under FDA jurisdiction. Together they planned a raid. St. Michael's Hospital, B2 level, research room. One morning, at 6 a.m., FBI and police teams entered the hospital, showed search warrant, went straight to B2, broke down the research room door. Inside, 8 patients, vegetative states, connected to tubes, illegal drug testing. FBI collected all equipment, files, records. Dr. Victor Ashford and Chief of Medicine Dr. William Crane were arrested. Both said, "We know nothing." But evidence was clear. 240 death certificates, all signed by Ashford, 8 active subjects, records, everything. The trial lasted 6 months. Dr. Ashford and Dr. Crane were charged with 18 counts, issuing false death certificates, conducting illegal drug trials, human experimentation without consent, falsifying medical records. Result, both found guilty. Ashford 25 years prison, Crane 18 years prison. St. Michael's Hospital paid $500,000 compensation to each of the 240 families, total $120 million. The hospital didn't go bankrupt, but its reputation was destroyed. Research division shut down. But the real question was, what would happen to the drugs on the market? NeuroRevive, cardiostable, immunoboost. 92,000 patients were using them. FDA launched an investigation, reviewed the drug's phase 2 testing. The data was real, results were accurate, drugs worked, but the tests were conducted illegally, without consent, without ethics. Question: should they pull the drugs from market, or, since results matter, leave them? FDA conducted a 3-month evaluation, finally decided drugs will remain on market because 1. Drugs are safe and effective, tests illegal but results accurate. 2. 92,000 patients depend on these drugs. If withdrawn, their lives are at risk. 3. New testing would take 5+ years. Thousands would die in that time. But $500 million fine to manufacturing companies, and all future tests will be monitored by independent auditors. When the decision was announced, debate erupted. Ethics experts: this is wrong. Drugs from illegal testing cannot be approved. The end doesn't justify the means. Patients: but we're alive because of these drugs. If they pull them, we'll die. Families of 2040 victims: our loved ones were used as guinea pigs. These drugs are built on their suffering. They should be banned. Doctors: the drugs work. They help patients. Those who conducted tests are guilty, but the drug itself is innocent. As David closed the case file, he asked Marcus, "Is this the right decision?" Marcus replied, "Ethically, no. Illegal testing should never be approved, because it encourages others to do the same in the future. Says if results are good, process doesn't matter. But practically, if we pull the drugs, 92,000 people suffer. Both are bad choices. But which is less bad? I don't know." 1 year later, Sarah Martinez was still a nurse, but at a different hospital. She'd resigned from St. Michael's. Too many memories, too much pain. At her new job, on night shifts, sometimes she thought about Mr. Henderson, the 240 patients, their families, and the drugs on the market. Others are living because of their suffering, she thought. Is that fair? There was no answer. Dr. Victor Ashford, in prison, didn't appear remorseful. In an interview with a journalist, he said, "I didn't commit a crime. I saved lives. 240 people were already in vegetative states. They had no life, but the data they provided gave life to 92,000 people. I'm a hero, not a criminal." The journalist asked, "But the families didn't consent." Ashford replied, "If I'd asked, they would have said no." because they get emotional, but I think scientifically, 240 versus 92,000, the math is simple, but math didn't explain ethics. Because those 240 people weren't just numbers, each was a family, a story, a life, and they were made test subjects without their knowledge or consent. This was a human rights violation. Regardless of the math, Elena released a documentary, titled The Last Shift, How 240 Dead Patients Became Guinea Pigs. The documentary went viral, 5 million views, started national debate, Congress proposed new laws, Human Experimentation Consent Act, 2025. Every medical trial must require written consent from patient or family, including vegetative state patients. Independent ethics committee must oversee each trial. Doctors who violate, life imprisonment. But until the law passed, were there similar cases at other hospitals? Elena investigated. She found suspicious death certificates at 3 more hospitals. All chose cremation, all signed by the same doctor. FBI launched new investigations. Maybe St. Michael's wasn't alone. Maybe this was a widespread system. One night, David sat with Marcus and Elena. "We stopped Ashford, but we didn't stop the system," he said. Marcus replied, "Because the system is an incentive structure. If you conduct illegal testing and don't get caught, the drug reaches market and you make millions. Risk is high, but reward is higher. That's why some take the risk," Elena added. "And worst of all, even if you're caught, the drug stays on market. So ultimately, you've achieved your goal. You go to prison, but your drug saves lives. Some might see that as worth it." Perhaps that was the biggest lesson. Ethics must be protected by the system, because individual morality was insufficient. Ashford saw himself as justified. For the greater good, he said. But who determined greater good? Who decided that 240 lives were less valuable than 92,000 lives? These questions shouldn't be answered by individuals. They should be answered by the system, transparently and democratically. 2 years later, NeuroRevive was still on the market. Now 70,000 patients used it. Each one's life improving, Alzheimer's slowing, families happy. But in a corner, in one of 40 families' homes, an urn sat. "Beloved father," it read. Inside were ashes. But whose ashes? Unclear. Because father, for 18 months in vegetative state, in the basement, was used as a test subject. Then he really died, during testing, and his family chose cremation, never suspecting. And so, for the first time in medical history, a question remained unanswered. If a drug was developed through illegal testing, but saves lives, is it ethical to use that drug? Or, with each use, do we betray the victims of those illegal tests? We don't know the answer. Maybe we never will. But we know one thing. 240 people were made test subjects without consent. And on their suffering, an industry was built. We must not forget this. Because if we forget, it could happen again.